So, let's talk about one of the biggest questions out there right now. How do we make sure that the artificial intelligence we're building actually helps us without accidentally creating systems that cause real harm? Today, we're going to dig into a new blueprint for protecting our most basic human rights in this new age of AI.
And first, let's just get this out of the way. The potential of AI is absolutely incredible. I mean, we're talking about discovering new medicines, creating new materials, and finding answers to scientific problems that used to take decades. The potential for good here it's just staggering.
But, and this is a huge but, with all that incredible power comes some pretty serious risk. When these AI systems are designed badly, or just rolled out without really thinking through the consequences, they can cause devastating harm to people's lives. We're talking about fundamental rights here. And look, this isn't just some sci-fi scenario or a far-off problem. It's already happening. Cases from the Netherlands, which we'll get into, are this flashing red light, this warning that AI's impact on our rights can be incredibly deeply invasive. All of which leads to this really unsettling question. Could an AI system actually violate your rights without ever processing your name, your address, or any of your personal data, without even knowing who you are? As we're about to find out, the answer is a big, resounding yes. Okay, so how is that even possible? To really get our heads around it, we first have to look at the hidden human cost when these powerful algorithms fail, because the consequences aren't just data points, they are profoundly real. And this is exactly what went down in the Dutch childcare benefits scandal. An algorithm, which was built to spot fraud, just got it wrong. It falsely flagged thousands of innocent families. We're talking about people who were driven into bankruptcy, they lost their homes. The trauma was immense, all because an automated system made a catastrophic error. It just shows you how high the stakes really are. All right, so if that's the risk, what's our defense? What's the shield we have in place to stop this kind of thing from happening? Well, right now, our main tool is something called a Data Protection Impact Assessment, or a DPIA. But, as we're about to see, that shield has a pretty big crack in it. Think of a DPIA like this. It's basically a mandatory risk assessment. Under big laws like Europe's GDPR, before you can launch a new project that handles people's personal data, you have to stop. You have to think about the risks to people's rights, and you have to show how you're going to minimize those risks. And on paper, this is a really powerful tool. And pay attention to the wording here because it's super important. The law doesn't just say protect the data, it very specifically says to protect the rights and freedoms of natural persons. That means the goal is much, much broader than just privacy. It's about protecting fundamental human rights. But here's where we hit a wall. Despite that great intention, there's a huge critical gap in our digital defenses. It's what we're calling the personal data gap. Here's the problem in a nutshell. A DPIA, that shield, only gets activated when a system is processing personal data. But the challenge, the threat, is that so many modern AI systems can have a massive impact on our rights without ever touching personal data. This creates a huge, dangerous blind spot. Let me give you a perfect example. Imagine a predictive policing AI. It's not looking at your name or my name. It's just analyzing anonymous crime statistics for a whole neighborhood. But based on its analysis, the police decide to ramp up patrols and surveillance in that area. Suddenly, everyone living there is facing more scrutiny, maybe even more searches. Your freedom of movement and right to privacy are impacted. But because no one's personal data was used by the AI itself, a DPIA was never even triggered. So, what's the fix? How do we plug this hole? Well, the source material we're looking at proposes a brand new blueprint, a human rights impact assessment specifically for AI. Let's call it the HRI AI. And the idea behind it is actually pretty brilliant in its simplicity. It takes all the good stuff from the DPIA framework, but it gets rid of that one critical flaw. The trigger isn't personal data anymore. Instead, you'd use this for any AI system that's considered high risk. It forces a real conversation about human rights from the get-go. Okay, that sounds good in theory, but what does it actually do? How would one of these assessments work in the real world? Well, the proposal breaks it down into 5 clear steps. First, a pre-assessment. You figure out if the AI is even high risk enough to need this. If it is, you move to step 2, a deep dive into what the AI is and what it does. Then step 3, and this one is so important, is this big ethical gut check. Do we really need this AI? And is it proportionate to the problem we're trying to solve? Step 4 is where you identify the specific risks to human rights. And finally, step 5 is the action plan. What are you going to do to fix or reduce those risks? It's like a full checkup before an AI gets released into the wild. So let's take a closer look at just one part of that, step 2. You can see it's not just about ticking a box that says we described the AI. It's about forcing developers to ask some really tough questions about where the data comes from, who's going to use this system, and what the real-world impact might be. The whole point is to find those hidden risks before it's too late.
Okay, so we have this framework, this blueprint, but digging into it actually unearths a much bigger, almost philosophical question that gets to the very core of AI safety. When we talk about assessing risk, what do we actually mean? On one hand, you've got the consequentialist view. This is basically a cost-benefit analysis. You weigh the good an AI might do against the potential harm to rights. But on the other hand, you have the categorical approach. And this view says, whoa, hold on. Some things, like fundamental rights, are non-negotiable. They're absolute, and they should never be violated, no matter how great the supposed benefit is. And this quote from the scholars Jung and Bygrave really just hammers home that second point. They put it so bluntly. Violating a fundamental right isn't just a negative outcome you can balance out. It is, quote, a serious moral wrong to court, period. End of story. And that leaves us with this final, really important question. A question for you, for all of us. When a company or a government builds an AI that could affect your life, who gets to decide what an acceptable level of risk to your fundamental rights is? The people who built it? The regulators? Or you? It's a question we're all going to have to answer, and soon. Thanks for watching.